Yay, I think we can start it. So I think it would be nice for us to introduce ourselves to everyone who is listening or who listening in the future. From our side in Campinas Hub, I'm Victor Pamplona, the current creator of the hub.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anna, also part of the team. I am this creator with Victor.
And from the Phoenix side,
Hi, yes, I'm Anna Bartholomew. I'm currently the Impact Officer, but was curator for 2024 to 2025, and been a shaper for almost 3 years now in the Phoenix Hub, and been with Brittany for most of that, so I'll pass it to Brittany.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Matthews Fulop. I'm the current curator of the Phoenix Hub, and I have been in leadership the last 3 years, some of those with Anna, and a shaper the last 4 years.
amazing. I think to start, it'd be nice to those who are listening who are not shapers to know a little bit of who we are and what we do. Maybe I could share a little bit of my perspective, and I don't know if Phoenix would like to do the same. But well, the Global Shapers is a initiative from the World Economic Forum that looks to locally the issues that our communities are having and try to organize, mostly with the young people, what we can do about it. In that sense, we do understand that although our reality from Campinas, Brazil, and Phoenix from USA are different, we still can share some good thoughts to improve how we could work to change locally.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think the Shapers community is huge. I mean, we're over 10,000 strong with over, 500 hubs, and I think it was over 100 countries last I checked. And we just have a great opportunity as young professionals to make a local impact that can ripple out and become global, like you said.
Local impact with a global community is what I've always been told, and I think that's what's so cool about being a shaper.
That's what we're exercising to do, right?
Exactly. And it is a space to develop leadership in our community. So I think it's very important for young people to have the space, to have this community. So I think we are creating a lot of interesting things
together. Amazing.
Exactly.
I think in that sense, it would be nice to understand how Campinas, in the southeast of Brazil, and Arizona, the west part of the US, could have anything in common or in opposite that could get us together to talk about mainly water. I think it would be nice to start by giving an overview of how the realities are and how important this conversation is. Maybe since we started, I think it's nice to give an idea that, well, people have this concept that Brazil is in general a place that rains a lot and doesn't have any issue with dry season. But that's not true. We are in a region in Brazil that constantly has to deal with floods and a lot of rain and lightning and all the issues with electricity that comes from it. But there are places in Brazil that dry season is a huge problem and a huge cause of immigration. And I think that's also true for the US. You have regions that deals with flood, but also regions that deal with dry season.
Yeah, that's definitely the case in the United States with such a large country. We have very different ecosystems and weather patterns, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things about our country, but also it can be extremely challenging to kind of meet in the middle or have like a common understanding on water resource management. And I think as we were going about our Twin City meetups, I work in water resources in Arizona and strictly representing my own thoughts and findings from my time in my current field. But I will say that with such a diverse country, there can be a lot of challenges when it comes to a unified approach to water resource management. I guess one of the most recent things being is that Arizona has a lot of rivers that don't run year round, whereas the East Coast does. And they would probably define some of the river waterways in Arizona not rivers because they don't flow year round. Whereas people in the Southwest would probably argue otherwise because we don't get a lot of water. So that's just kind of an example of differing kind of perceptions when it comes to how much water you have. But I think with that being said, there's so many things that we can learn even in different situations, and that's kind of what's brought us here today.
Amazing. I think just to end with the beginning, it would be nice to understand in that scenario what we are doing now could mean to who are listening, but also to our hubs and other hubs in the world. The fact that although we are from different realities, specifically Campinas and Phoenix, I think a lot of our message and what we have to exchange could inspire other shapers or listeners to kind of reflect of the good actions that are being made in other places and see how we could replicate it in our regional space.
Yeah, and I think at least something that we try to find when we're in a large community like this is common ground, and water is one of those things that we all need and all rely upon. And I think that's why I really enjoyed this field in the first place, because it brings everybody together, all walks of life, and everyone has to come to the table. So I think what is so special about having these conversations is that we all need water. And unfortunately, water is very stressed no matter where you live. And I don't think anyone is really absolved from a water crisis in one way or another, whether it's water quality issues or flooding or drought or, lack of water sources. I think there's just a lot of issues that our generation's going to be facing, and we will have to be doing something about it, because I think the can has been kicked, so to say, or at least solutions have been prolonged, and we're getting to the point where our generation knows we need to actually address this. So future generations will also be okay. But we're also being met with some pretty intense challenges that our peers and mentors haven't even seen before either. So we're all kind of trying to figure out what to do as we go. So I think it's also taking a look back in history, having respect for it, and looking at the lessons learned, but then also realizing we're in somewhat uncharted territory, and maybe the solutions of the past will not carry us into the future too. So
Totally agree.
Exactly. And talking about water, I think this is important because we need to have more awareness in Brazil, because I think we take this for granted because we have a lot of water. It's like a resource very common in Brazil, but we need to talk more about this and the issues and different realities in Brazil and in the world, and how everyone is dealing with these challenges. So I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I think we should share a little bit of the cultural perspective in both realities and see how each country and each region sees this issue as truly an issue or not. Like in Brazil, I feel like we started to discuss this kind of things a lot in the beginning of the decade of 2010. But for some reason, maybe political or geopolitical and other conflicts got in the way, and we simply didn't advance as much as we needed to. I think we're in 2026, but I think the conversations that we were having in 2011, 2012 are still the same from our side.
I would definitely concur with that. Especially my mind easily goes to the Colorado River, and we are in, I think, year 26 of a mega drought, but it kind of begs the question, is this just the new reality, as well, if it's lasting this long? That seems to be the case. I would also say that it's only getting hotter every year. There's so many jokes that we're experiencing the coolest summer for the rest of our lives, but the hottest one so far, I guess. And that is definitely the case in Arizona. Aridification is really putting a strain on our water resources in the region, and everything's drier. Also, when it's drier, the flooding is a lot worse. It can really just barrel right through communities because the ground is so slick, if you will. There's nothing absorbing that water. So Arizona deals with floodings. I know that we're also projecting a El Nino this year, and that's really got me concerned. It may translate to more rains in Arizona, but that could also mean more flooding as well. I think also looking to the future, it's hotter and drier. That's definitely going to be it. But also, we're going to probably experience more frequent, or not as frequent, but more intense storms when they do come around. So they may not be as frequent, but they will be a lot more aggressive. And maybe that's harder to prepare for such large events. And especially with El Nino coming around, I think the Southwest US has potential for hurricanes, which is not usually what happens with us, but it has happened. Hurricane Hillary was an example of that a couple of years ago. So I think there's going to be things that we can anticipate, like the warmer, drier future, but also there's going to be some things like we don't deal with hurricanes, and that's maybe something we could be considering a little bit more. So I think there's a lot to be looking at in the future, and we can try to prepare as much as possible. And that's why it's amazing to have these conversations, because we can all kind of learn together and see maybe some regions are already experiencing this and whatnot and what they're doing.
And no one can predict the future, but it's always nice to have conversations about the present and what we can do now.
Yeah, to be ready to it. I think in that sense, it gets to us the question of how we can see some techniques and some managements that are already being done to show us that a future is possible if we choose the right path. I don't know if from your side, Anna, you could share some of the dynamics that you think that could work and we could expand to other places in the US or maybe in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the larger issues with the water resources field is that it's a very technical field. There are lawyers, there are engineers, there are policy experts, there's so many layers. And then we also have a pretty big Native American tribal presence in Arizona. We have the most tribes in the whole United States, and they have senior water rights to a lot of the water in our area. So I think one thing is, with that being said, there are a lot of older folks making a lot of the decisions that we will be living with. And as though like it comes with so much time to have such depth of water knowledge that yes, those people know exactly what they're doing. They've been doing it for 60 years, but I definitely want to see more mentorship programs and more efforts from older generations and younger generations to learn from them and share that knowledge, because I know when COVID hit, a lot of people retired earlier than they anticipated, and we lost a lot of amazing knowledge that we could have capitalized on, I guess, and had access to. And I think that's definitely a field, like this is an issue in my field, but I think it's not foreign to a lot of other fields as well. And really having older generations tell us what they know and our ambitions and our concerns too, and maybe we can meet in the middle. I think also just spreading the word. I think the reality in Arizona definitely weighs heavy on my heart, but I try to tell everybody, please just look up your water source. Just
It's true.
look into it. And I'm from Texas, so I actually read a book that was like a dystopian water future, and there was basically this fictional story was saying that there's a lot of people fleeing from Texas, and I was like, wait, why what's going on with my hometown? And I learned that actually, even though Texas is a wetter climate, they have a lot of communities that rely on one source of water, and they have different rules and regulations, but there are now cities that may run out of water in Texas by July. So it's coming down pretty fast. And I also think back to when Atlanta was taking water in the early 2000s in Georgia, and they basically were taking water that they shouldn't have. They didn't have rights to it at Lake Lanier. And a judge ruled, like, you have 90 days to stop using it. It's very draconian, very aggressive. And the folks in Atlanta called the people in Las Vegas and said, what do we do? Can you help me? And so I think with being in the Southwest, we are leaders because every day we have to think about the lack of water. And it's extremely obvious here, whereas it kind of makes me scared and uncomfortable for those who live in wetter climates and thinking that that issue isn't going to touch them ever, when it actually seems to come a little bit more quickly than they anticipate.
Yeah, the dystopian for ones are like the reality from others already. I think in that sense, it would be nice to understand how this problem affects our local communities. I think you shared a little bit about the indigenous communities there. And I think it would be interesting in our case to share that whenever we have some issues with rain that are too much, we have people who suffer, who have their house drawn, who have everything lost because of water. And I think it's important to name that these families are not the ones that are with money. They are families that are exposed to these realities constantly, and mostly because of prejudice, but also the non-presence of the state and the support that they need to be equal in society. So in Brazil, we're using a lot of the term of environmental racism, which is that every time that something happens of natural disasters, it affects everyone for sure, but it always affects a small group more. And this group are people of color, people who are usually put away. So it's important to name what's going on and the people who are affected, instead of just saying, oh, it's a problem that affects everyone, so let's deal as a general structure and not prioritize a specific group.
Yeah, I think that segues very well, and it's something that I think one of the most frustrating aspects of being in my field was realizing the significant amount of time minorities have not have access to water that has been determined rightfully theirs. And the Navajo Nation still hasn't quantified their water rights for the Colorado River. That has been going on for 60 years at this point. I think the last time I heard, it's just sitting on the desk for the current administration to approve it. So that's been that way for the last year. So that's definitely something that needs to be addressed, point blank, period. I think also there was a really big emphasis on this disparity when COVID happened, and the Navajo Nation, a third of their members do not have water piped to their homes. So they have to go and drive maybe 30 minutes, 50 minutes to a water source. And that water source may or may not be contaminated, but how these localized water sources were also areas that everyone was going to because they needed water, but that was also spreading COVID a little bit more too, because they all needed to go to the same place to get that. So there was actually a significant higher rates of cases on the Navajo Nation because they needed to go access water, and how that kind of goes hand in hand. So that's definitely something that keeps me up at night. And also, the rules out in the Southwest is first come, first serve for water rights. So if you're first, you're the senior user. Well, it's pretty obvious with Native Americans that they were definitely here first. So they have the highest senior right. But I think that's why that's been a little bit of a hesitancy to quantify their rights because they would have such a senior water right. So I think when it comes to the Colorado River, we need those things to be finalized so we can have some more certainty around what everyone else is going to do regarding that. And also, it is well overdue, and this is just the right thing. So,
For sure. What I do think it's important for us as shapers, but also, I mean, for us, this project is like a pillar of engagement. So what we can do about it is making people aware that this is a problem, and mostly that there are solutions that we could go and try to solve it or try to charge more the responsibles, be it companies, be it governments.
Yeah, and I think that um, we need to that people understand that we are not talking about water only about in technical ways. When we have something like floods, imagine in the next years, people that are living in the areas, they maybe don't feel safe in their own homes, in their own cities. And so when we are talking about water, we also talking about these communities, about how they can relate it to the place that they are living, and all these emotions and all these human aspects that sometimes we don't bring this to the table when we are talking about water.
I love that you bring that up because the indigenous communities here have a saying called water is life. And they really emphasize that no, water is not just this technical aspect, it is cultural, it is recreational, we're made up of 75% of water, so is the rest of the world. And I was actually just at the Salt River kayaking yesterday and, just getting in touch with nature. But yeah, I am grateful that there are communities here that see the value of this shared resource in so much more depth than just, policy agreements and engineering feats and whatnot. But it is maybe some of our best memories in the summertime, or who doesn't like a good rain shower? Obviously not too much, but water means so much more to us. And whether that's like playing in the sprinklers and like water parks as a kid or something like that, like we all have some kind of water love for it. And I guess I'm thinking of kind of like a fun thing that's happened recently. I believe it's in Thailand or India, but they have like a festival where they're like shooting water guns at everybody. I think it's Thailand, but I saw that they just did that recently. But what a fun thing, but all kind of comes back to water. And, if they had water problems, could they celebrate that holiday, right? And I think that's definitely when we get into some cultural aspects of water resources, like, some people have funeral proceedings that deal with water and like cultural aspects that are really significant. And I know a lot of the indigenous communities here, their names and their family names are tied to the river. And some of them would be like where the Red River meets the Turquoise River, and that's their name. So how it's literally in the fabric of our beings. And I think they remind us that it is with all of us too. So
I agree with that. And I also, well, I did international relations, and we studied that, for example, United Nations has a movement of harmony with nature, who sees the river as a being as well. So we're not the only beings here, not only also the animals, but also the river, the forest, and we need to preserve it. Not because we need it, but it's because it's important. It's important to the whole environment, and it has its rights. I think it's also important, as you shared about the communities, the indigenous communities there, that we also share some of the issues that we go through that are surprising to us. For example, I see that in the US, as in Brazil right now, we're dealing with a lot of what could be the future with the data centers and their demand for water. How do you see that?
well, I guess when you started talking at like recognizing personhood, I did want to also highlight a really incredible feat. I believe it's the Maori people in New Zealand that were actually the first to achieve personhood rights for one of their local waterways. And actually, the Colorado River Indian tribes also granted personhood to the Colorado River. Unfortunately, I think when it comes to that, like coming down from the federal government for the United States, that would really solidify the personhood aspect. But the concept itself came from, corporations would develop personhood for, the corporations, Amazon and Patagonia and whatnot. But we're kind of applying some of the economic frameworks and terms to environmental aspects and kind of using that. So that's been a really interesting kind of development that I've seen, and how we've, taken these abstract concepts and tried to become function with them and work with them. And I will admit, I forgot the last question. Can you repeat that?
The data centers.
Oh, the data centers. Who could forget those? So yeah, well, Arizona, I think, is number one for the most data centers being built and to be built. There's also a pretty sweet tax incentive to do so. There is also some favorability with the location and also low humidity, not many natural disasters aside from, 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 42 degrees Celsius. So that's, I think, the worst things that we get. But at the end of the day, using drinking water for these data centers in such high quality, that definitely deeply concerns me. And I think there's like confusion on who is allowing these things to happen, right? Like, I know some people come to the Department of Water Resources for the state of Arizona and ask, like, how could you allow this? But I think it also comes back to where they get the water rights. They need to have water rights to do anything. They need a piece of paper with an agreement and a number with that amount. And I know there's a lot of news articles saying that they don't know how to quantify how much water they're going to use. And I don't think we should be jumping on anything that we cannot measure, and we cannot measure what we cannot manage, or we cannot manage what we cannot measure. But anyways, I think that is the most concerning, that they are so reluctant to share their water use, because every other industry has that in some capacity. And I think it's kind of already setting them up to have suspicions and other people to be hostile for them to come into their community, because there is not clear communication from the get-go. And I definitely want transparency. I think everybody deserves transparency, especially when it comes to drinking water. And I think also a big aspect of this is where the energy is coming from. You also need water to cool down any energy source, and then also using energy. And I know that the one proposed data center in Utah could actually increase the temperature of the surrounding area at nighttime by 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So a pretty significant jump. So I think what I see, I used to be, I think, hesitant towards AI, and I'm kind of coming to terms with, okay, I'd rather work with these people and develop solutions than try to ignore this, but it's coming either way. So I think we need to sit at the table and have transparent conversations about the actual water use and the numbers and the data. And that's, I think, where we can start. And yeah, it's just, we need to have coherent, clear conversations, and that's how you build trust. So
yeah, as we learn more about the technology as well, we can find ways like, how can we make it more sustainable? How can we make it more ethical? How can we truly work together with everyone at the seat, with seat at that table, and see what we can do?
Yeah, I would say that these cities are really trying to come together and develop best practices or policies for data centers, because I know there are some communities in my area that were blindsided in a way and didn't have all these expectations. So now they're kind of sharing how you should do things. But I know that there are some places that are looking to just do evaporative cooling as their only option and really trying to lessen that water use. And I think we should all be, for all industries, is really trying to minimize our environmental footprint regardless. So
Yeah. I hope that water gains the same visibility that carbons have been receiving the last few years. Like everyone started to talk about carbon emissions, carbon credits, the people habits, then the companies worry about supply chain, scope one, two, three. And of course, we have a journey to a lot of these issues. But I hope that water gains this same visibility. So we start to have more conversations like water footprint, water credits, how these data centers are using water, and how people in general are using water. So that's my hope for the future.
Yeah, I do see Brazil, or at least Campinas, in a moment of pretty excitement about the data centers because it means technology, it means future. But seeing what is going on in other places where that's already a reality, it brings us to attention of, okay, now that's getting here, let's start in the right way. So it's very important for us to hear how this experience is being in other places in the world, so we could see, okay, so they already know what could be done, let's start with that. Because as you said, Brittany, we cannot avoid the future. It's better to work with it, but in the right way, in the way that is sustainable and it doesn't affect the communities that is surrounding to. And I think that's also the reason of why this podcast and this conversation is important, because we need to discuss this and we need to have ideas and have awareness that this is an issue, but not only about the problem, but about the solution that we could propose and that could be on the way and that could be and that people could uh, embrace them. So not only the data centers owners or the government officials, but also the people, the citizens, the shapers, the young people, everyone that is interested needs to have access to the information and the possibilities that we have, so we all play a part and have their voices heard.
Exactly.
that's what I love about Shapers too, that our hub is really diverse with a lot of different fields. And recently we've onboarded a lot of new members that are in AI and working at these facilities. And, you know, in my current career field, if I wasn't in Shapers, I don't know if I would interact with these people like in a casual way and have a no stakes kind of conversation, you know? And I think that's one of the best part about being in this community is that you can touch base on developments in fields that maybe you had no idea were moving in that direction. And I love like talking to these up and coming AI specialists about, okay, are you thinking about water? Because I would love to ask you about that. And I don't know, that seems a little higher up for them, but still, I want them to be thinking about it too, and that anything we do really does have an impact to water, either directly or indirectly. And I am grateful for Shapers for expanding my understanding and how this impacts everyone in my community.
For sure. I think it's time for us to also think about the future and how we manage to play in that future. I do think that by sharing some thoughts, we have a notion of the reality that is different from ours. But it's important to know what we can do with this information and with this insight. And I think this podcast is just a step of this journey of how we can feel inspired and see that the problems that we share are also, though different, but they are also there, and that we can think together in the global perspective of the global shapers. But after that, we can act locally. So looking to the future in 5 or 10 years, I like to hear from you and then jump to us again. But I would like to understand from your side as a hub in Phoenix, how do you feel like the global shapers community there could play a role to bring awareness or maybe change the perspective a little bit of this future to change from a dystopia to a possible utopia. And by the way, I have a comment about that I use in my graduation, that I think that dystopia is something that we know that might happen, such as a war, a disaster, a crisis. And we usually look to the utopia as something that will never happen, and that you never need to think about it because it won't happen. And I think the perspective that you should bring to this conversation as well is that a dystopia is an alternative bad possibility, and then the utopia is an alternative good possibility. If we spend a lot of time looking to the dystopia and never think about the utopian, we don't even have a reference of how the future could be. So that's the inspirational discussion, but I'd like to hear from you of how you think that the Global Shapers community in Phoenix could play a role in the future.
Yeah, you know, I've been watching a lot of documentaries recently, and one of them was the Oceans documentary with David Attenborough. And I have already noticed a really good transition in sustainability, environmental advocates. Is that documentary was rough, I will admit. Like I cried for sure, but at the end, they really are emphasizing the solutions and success stories, and we are seeing them. Like an example of a great success story is actually the elk populations in northwest United States was significantly depleting in the early 1900s, and they I think we're maybe down to like 2,000 elk left, and now there's probably 500,000. It's been so successful. They brought them back, and it was only possible working with conservationists, the government, and hunters, because hunters were noticing this issue as well. So I think when we come together, we can craft amazing solutions. And speaking to your dystopian, utopia aspects, I think we're kind of maybe like, I think we underestimate how much we impact our environment, but I think we also underestimate how much the environment bounces back. And the Oceans documentary significantly pushed that as well. There were some marine areas that had been decimated and were looking very awful. And then I think they projected that maybe in 10 years it could possibly get back to what it was. It achieved that within 2 years, I think. Don't quote me on it, of course, but I knew it was just they did not anticipate to be successful as it was, and honestly, like be better than it was before too. So I think we need to really be looking at these success stories and sharing them more. I think it's easy to get into the doom and gloom of this reality, especially if you're passionate about it, but that isn't helpful for us as people and our mental health too, but also for our community to just, feel like there's nothing we can do about it and there's nothing good, but there's been a lot of success and we've actually achieved amazing things, and there's still a lot of work to be done, but I know we can do it. And I guess when I think about the future, in Arizona, in Phoenix specifically, the cost of living has skyrocketed in the last 10 years. It's significantly changed. And I moved here 10 years ago. So I've seen it kind of gradually. And people said 2017 was like the last good year, I guess. And then everything got really expensive really fast. And one of kind of the compounding factors with the cost of living came down to actually water here too. So in 2023, our governor put out a housing moratorium saying houses that are built to be owned cannot be built solely relying on groundwater anymore. We cannot tell families that they can stay there for 70 years and have a guaranteed water source on groundwater supplies. So that has definitely come with quite a few disagreements and some lawsuits here and there. We're working through it, but I think when it comes to seeing these impacts and how the cost of living's already gone up and how we're significantly behind on some infrastructure upgrades, I think we really need to be anticipating that things are just going to continue to get more expensive. And maybe that is something we can be looking towards as, rebate programs for kind of changing out some of water fixtures in your home, using less water, but then also I think it'll come down to like anybody just, budgeting, cost saving, and really thinking about their, cost of living here, because I really think it's gonna get more expensive in order to accomplish what all needs to be done. And I think I want to be prepared for that. I want my friends and I to be prepared for that. But I think also there is going to be a big push always to have multiple supplies. I think in the future, at least, that it feels more and more likely that desalinated water from the ocean I feel like that's just going to be it. It gives me a lot of anxiety because there's still a lot of things to work through, and it's a very expensive, energy intensive operation. Once again, like there's no silver bullet, of course, but I definitely anticipate more desalination projects, and maybe our coastal communities definitely are already feeling it too. Like I know maybe San Diego is already in that position. So yeah, I would say that there's going to be definitely guarantees with some costs going up, and I think also spreading out other water sources. And fact of the matter is it's only going to get more expensive, so tell your governments to do something about it now, because the price tag is just getting higher. And that's what I'm kind of seeing happening with Corpus Christi out of Texas, is that they didn't really want to do a desalination project because it was too expensive, and they may run out of water by July, so it's not good. And yeah.
To bring it back to the global shapers, though, I think I liked how Anna started off her response of like, we're underestimating like our impact on the environment. We're underestimating how much the environment can bounce back. We're also underestimating how much like we can positively make an impact, and we can truly like help prevent the dystopia, and hopefully go more towards that utopia, to utilize that again. I think we have a lot of really great opportunities. We have a lot of really passionate people of all ages all over the world who are really looking at this issue, among all the other issues we're experiencing, and just want to make a difference and want to make something good come of their actions and work together, and just really hopefully bring us towards a great future.
Yeah, and I think no act is too small. And I remember when I went to the annual summit in Geneva, I went to a water topic. I'm forgetting the group, but they had worked with other hubs in, I believe, Ecuador on providing clean water. And it was actually like a filter that you put on a water bottle, and the water bottle could be, filled with all kinds of pollutants or whatever, and it would filter it out, and they can have clean water right there. So I think, once again, it doesn't need to be this massive project, where shapers are going to the moon or something. But anyways, nothing's too small, and that definitely translates into a lot of projects that we do in the Phoenix Hub. And it's just those grassroots movements of really, providing people even the smallest thing is better than nothing at all. So
it really can make a change. I think what you shared in general is something that I would think we could go the same path here in Brazil and in Campinas. That I think everything is connected. So we're looking forward to a project about air quality, and we do understand that to have that we need to have trees. To have trees, at least we need to have health rivers, and everything is connected. Every dynamics needs to be there so we can breathe better, so we cannot have like health problems. And actually, when you go to the economics, to avoid more costs for health care, costs for infrastructure, dynamics, costs in this case of water and desalinization. So in the end, this conversation is about economics as well. It's about how we can make the future more affordable, but not only that, how we can see it as an opportunity to continue to grow in the good way, in the way that not only bring us awareness, but bring us a better quality of life. As you said, I think I'm at the same Ecuador curatorship who shared that idea with me, so it still exists and it's amazing that it does. But sorry, I also think that it makes us, yeah, it makes us hopeful about what we do and what we can learn from each other. You mentioned a bunch of other cities that I'm sure that have their hubs there, and I would love to hear what our Amazonian hubs could share about, for example, the idea of acai, who I don't know if it's popular there, but acai is a good example of an economical opportunity that is renewable. So we're using it, and in the 6 months you'll be there again. So you don't need to deforestate everything because you still have that option to produce, to enrich a community, but also create a whole supply chain infrastructure.
Yeah, that point is interesting because acai has a short shelf life. So we need infrastructure to work on this. But when we have rains in different patterns, for example, because of the climate change, the harvest of the acai is really, really hard. So everything is connected, as Victor said. And I think that brings us a very important point about global shapers, that is the systemic vision. Like, we have this opportunity to learn with each other, to have a lot of different visions, to have a lot of use cases, to talk with people from different cultures. So I think we need to explore more of this, and also we should be grateful because we are in this space, so we can uh, develop this systemic vision, so we can help to address these issues.
Yeah, I think we should use this space. I think as shaper, and I think it's a message to other shapers to use this possibility of exchange ideas and share common grounds on different topics that are similar or that are opposite to each one's reality. I think what we're discussing is pretty important, but it would be very interesting to hear about Ecuador's and someone from Austria, Vienna, of how they see this same issue. So it could bring awareness and understand that we can learn from each other. We can learn from Amazonian shapers discussing with Canadian on how to use acai, and in their case, maples, right? I think it's something that it's also a source of gains for that community, but could be exchanged internationally. So I invite other shapers to do this as well, to exchange their ideas with other shapers around the world and feel inspired about different topics and different possibilities, because that's the feeling that we have for the creators that goes to Geneva, to understand how many possibilities are true at the same time. So if we could do that for every shaper and in general for everyone who's interested in a virtual way, that's a good way to start and to have the same feeling that we had when we went to Geneva, in my case, and also Diana's case.
I agree that this program has felt like the continuance of the connections in Geneva very much. And this is the Phoenix Hub's third year entering the Twin Cities program provided by Global Shapers HQ. They pair you up with another city across the world, for those who don't know. And we first were paired with Alexandria, Egypt. So we really got, another desert city, and we really had like a casual cultural exchange and still learned a lot. And then the next year we were actually triplets. So we were with Hamburg, Germany, and then Khobar, Saudi Arabia. So we did sneak in another desert city. And we actually were really kicking off our extreme heat projects too. So it was really nice to talk with them and see how there were similarities and differences in extreme heat regions too. And here we are with the Campinas Hub, and I'm really excited that we did this podcast to discuss and spread the wider benefits of this program, because I think it's easy for us to be connected with our regional hubs, of course, but we really need to be utilizing this global space, and this is one of the ways to do it. And maybe in the future there's probably more opportunities like the air quality kind of initiative that's really bringing more people together. So I would definitely be thrilled to join a water initiative that brings all of these shapers to discuss this topic too. So yeah, I sing high praises for the Twin Cities program, and we will be doing it again because it's just invaluable, the connections that you can make. So
Amazing. I see that we have questions, so it would be interesting for us to hear the first one and see how we could discuss with that.
all right.
What an incredible and necessary debate. It's generally enriching to hear the depth of collaboration between Campinas and Phoenix. My question, looking ahead on the next steps is, given the discussions on the youth perspective and practical challenge, what is the immediate next milestones, next step the hub's plan to achieve to ensure the debated ideas translate into? And for that, I think it's, concrete, measurable actions within local communities. And for that, I think it's interesting because in Campinas, we're planning on starting planting tree initiative, because we do understand that although Campinas is a very forest city, we do see that in some places, mainly the ones that I mentioned that are socially unprivileged, this is not a common thing. So we do understand the need to support these communities, but not only that, we plan to also do communication campaign so people understand, everyone understands that the city is living in unequal access to air quality, water quality, and quality of life in the end. Because if you go to a place, you can see a lot of trees, you feel like, okay, this is heaven. And if you go like to 5 kilometers from there, it's another reality. It's a dystopia. So that's how I am very attached to the dystopian and utopia discussions, because in the end, I think both are possible. And the work in Campinas I see is to make this inequality the even as possible.
Yeah, and I think for the Phoenix Hub, it's kind of just come about naturally in a way. Like, I talk about water a lot, obviously, and it just, I got bit by the water bug. But I just started throwing out there that there was a lot more documentaries in the last year that, hey, there's this water event, any other shapers that want to join me? And people just started tagging along, and we went to a short documentary film showing, and then we had a panel discussion that had representatives from the news agencies that cover all these water issues, but also the Hopi Nation and other people that were advocates of the Glen Canyon Restoration Project. So I think it's just come about naturally, this educational, bite-sized information for other shapers to slowly dip their toes in, literally, to water. And so that's been happening, and it's kind of been coined as the water conservation conversation is what we've been kind of naming it as. And I am just encouraging people to start thinking about it. But I guess for me personally, I have wanted to share a kind of unique aspect for shapers in our age. We're entering prospective homeownership time. We want to buy homes, and I definitely want to spread my knowledge that, okay, if you buy a home in this area, you have really good water rights, or what's your water situation, and encouraging people to look into these water situations regardless of where they go, because I think you got to look out for yourself, unfortunately. And, I think we all need to be helping each other in getting this information that may not be readily given to us. So I think when it comes to that, it's definitely an educational push. And I really want to spread knowledge that's relevant to the shapers and our age range, and, protecting them as well. I think also there is going to be significant cuts from the Colorado River to be announced even further by the end of August. And it seems like they're moving into every 2 years, they're going to kind of revisit, which I mean, let's do it, I guess. We're trying our best, but it just seems like this is going to be a continuing conversation for a long time. And when it comes to the hub, I want to be able to tell them what's going on and it's not overwhelming and really confusing. And so now we're at a point where, I think people know where their water sources come from and they have a basic understanding of what's going on with the Colorado River. So it's not as, I think, daunting, dystopian, like you mentioned, when you start to actually dig into the pieces that why it got to this way. So I think doing your research is always valuable and just spreading what you've learned too.
I'll add a couple of things. If you are interested in like where your water comes from, etc., a lot of times like the local utilities will have like a wealth of knowledge available. It's just maybe you don't know it's there, so you can always look that up. I know they do a good job of that in Arizona because we are so focused on our water. And then the other thing I would say is for the water conservation conversation, every single hub can do this. Every single person can do this. It doesn't have to be a hub per se. There's a lot of different things. There might be water documentaries, or like, for example, at our monthly meetings, we sometimes have our shapers talk about what they're an expert in for like 15 minutes of the meeting. And we've had Anna present before from our last documentary, and she's going to be presenting at our next meeting as well. And I've learned so much from her, and I still learn from her because on this podcast, I learned a lot that I didn't know. And I talk to Anna all the time about water.
And that's what I love. It's never ending, really. And, that can be daunting, but that's what's also like so exciting about it too. So
I think it's nice to also hear that we have another question. Let's see.
Okay.
This is an excellent discussion on the importance of anticipating crisis. Is there a specific joint impact project planned or currently underway between Campinas and Phoenix? That's exciting. I think the most that we can say about it is that we've been developing these conversations for a long time. We wanted to do something together, and we wanted to be the most impactful as possible given our distance. I think to start with, the whole podcast idea is a great project that I could see being reframed and shared between different shapers and realities. But who knows, we may develop future things together, even though we wouldn't be twin hubs anymore, but that's not a problem. We're already attached to each other.
Agreed. Yeah. And, I think at least a water project will be there. I'm really excited that you are considering a tree planting project because we actually did one a couple of years ago. So, if it doesn't deal with water, it can still deal with other projects. And, it's been amazing being you guys as twins. And so I'm really sad it'll be ending, but I think we learned a lot from each other. And I dove into Campinas and I learned a lot about that region and the history as well. And I think that's something that we can keep going. And I'll be listening in to future renditions of the podcast. And if you want me to come back, I'd be more than happy to. But yeah, I think, it's just getting started in a lot of ways. So
Amazing. As we are coming to the end, I think it would be really nice for us to give our goodbyes for this podcast episode. I think it would be nice to thank the Hub of Phoenix for accepting the idea and suggesting such an important topic that could be really shareable between our hubs. I do say that for those who are interested in understanding both of our works, should follow us in our social medias. And if you're interested in, if you're not a shaper, also to be part of this community. If you are in Phoenix, if you're in Campinas, or if you're in any other communities around the world, I'm sure that there is a Global Shaper Hub that you could be part of. The Instagram page for the Campinas Hub is Global Shapers Campinas, and I will now give the floor if Anna doesn't want to say anything to the Hub of Phoenix.
Sorry?
No worries. It's just if you want to say anything.
Oh, yeah, I just want to thank you guys for this conversation. And I think it's very, very important is this kind of connection, this kind of partnership. So thank you for the time, for all the previous conversations, so we could be here today. And that's all.
Amazing. You, Phoenix?
Thank you guys so much for working with us. I'm so glad you are our twin city. And thank you for giving us this platform to talk about Global Shapers Phoenix, and then also to let our resident water experts chat a little bit about water usage, conservation, all that fun stuff.
Yes, always a pleasure to do that. And I just love emphasizing this important, very intimate resource that we all use. So so grateful for you guys and having this space to talk about topics that are relevant to all of us in some way or another.
Yeah, one quick action item for anyone watching. If you are between the ages of 18 and 27, you are eligible to join Global Shapers. So I highly recommend looking up your local hub if you have one, or potentially founding one if you don't and you're highly interested, or otherwise just learning more about your water resources, where your water is coming from, what's going on in the world, all that fun stuff. This is really just the first step and the first piece of information. Hopefully we got you guys hooked on it and wanting to look up more.
Yes, please look up your
Amazing.
water sources.
It's about giving spotlight to the youth. Thank you, Hub of Phoenix.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Doesn't say.